Hello everyone, thank you for coming to my channel. In this series, we'll discuss and talk about object-oriented analysis and design, and this is the introduction video. In this series, we will do a tour of the object-oriented analysis and design topics, and we'll cover various areas or topics like analysis and various patterns when designing the software. This is a beginner level topic, so you don't need to be an expert in OOP, but you do have to have a bit experience in a language like Java or C#, the ones with object-oriented programming feature. So let's talk about analysis and design. Analysis is usually associated with do the right thing, while design is usually associated with do things right. Analysis is the activity to monitor or to research something truly and carefully, so we understand the current condition and also the requirements. While we need design before we implement something, so we can have a big picture as a guidance, as a plan. Analysis in software usually means analyzing real life objects or real life things in real life, and they usually inspire the software objects in the design. And we will cover this topic later, but for now, understand that in analysis we have to identify and analyze the real objects, like a customer, employee, product, or something like that, and we can model them in a diagram like class diagram in UML, or we can use other diagram if we don't feel we have to use UML. So why do we need to design? Why do we need to design software? Why don't we implement it straightly without design? The reason is because we want less work. We don't just create a software and then throw it away, but there will be maintenance. We will have to maintain it for years sometime or even more. So we need to make sure that the structure is right, so it achieves some desired attribute. Here are some desired attribute in a software which are very important if we have to maintain them for a long time. Manageability includes readability and also independent. Independent means a part of the software can be deployed independently, so we don't need to deploy everything when there is a change in only a part of software. The other attribute that we want is reusability. Without it, there will be a lot of duplication. The next one is extensibility, so we can add a new feature easily. And flexibility is the next one. We don't want a frail software where a change in something affects everything. We want to be more flexible. We want our software to be easily changed without breaking the others. And the last one is testability. It's an attribute so that the software is easy to be tested. So why do we choose object-oriented programming over other programming paradigm or style? First of all, it has a syntax sugar, or it has a better format, so we can read it easily, easier than other style or paradigm like uh, like functional or structural. OOP is uh, closer to our mental model, so it's easier for us to read the code to maintain them. And according to Uncle Bob, the author of Clean Architecture, the most important feature of object-oriented programming is the self-indirect control. And what is it? And we'll talk about it later. Here are the object-oriented programming characteristics. First is abstraction. That means we abstract some important attribute or property from the object in real life, and the object inspire us to create a class, a software class. And let's take for example an employee. So we can take the first name, last name, employee number, attribute, etc. We don't need to take everything, but we take the most relevant one. It's called an abstraction. The next one is encapsulation. It means that a particular module, component, or class has private members that can be accessed from outside. It also has some protected members. The feature is actually based on the language. Some language have it, some language don't have it. So the idea of encapsulation is we want our system to be flexible. We don't want one change affects everything. So encapsulation is one way to force programmers to only couple a part of the system to the necessary part, because if you let a part of the system to access everything on the other part, there will be a lot of coupling and one change can break everything. The next attribute is inheritance. Just like in real life, software class can inherit other software class. By inheriting another class, they can add additional attribute and behavior. The next is polymorphism, and you probably already use override or overload features. There is polymorphism in OOP. Polymorphism in a lot of forms. In OOP, it usually means the same function can behave differently. The last one is modularity. That means some part of the system are contained in one module and the others are contained in another module, and they are independent from each other. The level of independence, of course, depend on the level of isolation and how you manage them. Like if they are in different deployment units, you can deploy them separately, or if they are only in different packages, you still have to deploy all of them together. You cannot deploy them independently, but you have separate them into different packets so that you can maintain them more easily. Here are a couple of object-oriented design basic principles. Cohesive. Cohesive means a class or a component should do a certain job, and we shouldn't assign too much responsibility in one class. There should be a limit, and the advantages are more readable, more usable because they are partitioned, so we can use those specific class from another system, so there will be no duplication in other part. They simply use that reusable piece of code or piece of class or piece of component. It also support low coupling because if all code are put in one file, everything can be coupled to each other and it will be really messy. But if we partition them, we can control the coupling with various design pattern and guidance. And the last one, it support dependency inversion. But what is dependency inversion? And we'll talk about it later. And it also supports low coupling. Low coupling means there are fewer relationship between classes. Of course, there have to be some relationship in software design, but we want them to be minimized so that one change from one part won't affect too much, because if there are a lot of coupling, just one change can break a lot of things. That's something that we don't want. Here are some general principle or tips. We'll just look at it at a glance. This is just an overview, and we'll talk about it later in another occasion. First one is code to the interface. That means when a part of code depends on another part, try to couple the dependent part to a more abstract interface instead of the constraint one. Next is encapsulate the common, so there will be a lot of reusable classes or components. There will be less duplication. And encapsulate the varying, it means we need to encapsulate the varying part of a certain functionality. Let's take, for example, a bonus calculation. We can encapsulate it to various classes like hourly bonus or daily bonus. So that piece of functionality varies, but it has the same structure, and we should encapsulate it to a new class. Favor composition over inheritance, because inheritance has stronger coupling than composition. Loose couple design between objects. Yeah, this is like the code to the interface principle, but it focuses more on the importance of loose coupling between objects instead of depend on a very specific class. We can depend on the interface or an abstract class, for example. That's what the next principle is: design on abstraction and not the constraint. And yakni you aren't gonna need it. It means do not add a new feature unless you're sure that you need it. And of course, sometimes our condition doesn't permit it and we have to take an early decision. It's all based on the condition, and this is a guidance and not rules. And don't talk to strangers. It means we shouldn't let one class talk to nested object from another objects or class, because it's like an encapsulation break. uh, it gives additional coupling, but of course, like I've said before, this is guidance and not rules, and sometimes we have no choice but to use it. So this is just an overview. Don't worry if you don't understand this completely. We'll talk more about design pattern later from the basic, so you can understand this principle after you read the next material. If you are interested, here are some good books and reference that I read in order to make this video series. Playing UML and Patterns by Craig Larman. It discusses a lot of design pattern, but it also teaches the reader about development methodology like rational unified process and iterative process. I think it's a very important book. Next is Head First Design Pattern, which is more lightweight and not too serious. There is Head First Object Oriented Analysis and Design, Object Oriented Analysis Design and Application by Grady Booch. It's one of the classic object oriented analysis and design book. Writing Effective Use Cases, Alistair Cockburn. Actually, it has nothing to do with design, but analysis and requirement are important things, and writing good use case is very important to capture the requirement. So it's one of the most important books too. And official Rational Unified Process material, I'm pretty sure that it will be useful. And software requirement, second editions. And again, that's not a book about design but more about requirement, but I think it's very important too, because AD also concerns with requirement and analysis beside design. And here are the overview of the design pattern. There are three that we will discuss: grabs, solid, and gang over. We'll discuss all of them in the next videos, but we will only take a look at the overview. We'll go through them, but not too detailed. We have reached the end of this video. Thank you for watching this video, and we'll talk about object-oriented analysis in the next video. Thank you.